Whenever you're ready, sir. All right, excellent. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chuck McLean. I'm the Chief Public Utility Law Judge here at the Maryland Public Service Commission. It is September 4th, approximately 2:30 p.m. We're here in case number 9729 for a settlement, hearing on a settlement agreement that was submitted. And the case is captioned Maryland Water Service, Inc.'s application for authority to revise and consolidate rates, charges, and tariff provisions for water and sewage disposal services. And just as a reminder, if you can speak, get kind of close to the mics. Our sound system is not the best, and you just have to have that little green light on. All right, we can start with appearances. Start with the company.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. It's very loud, actually. David Bugelman's.
Yeah, pick your poison. It's either too loud or you can't hear you.
Exact opposite issue. David Bugelman's on behalf of Maryland Water Service. I'm also joined today by my colleague Maxwell Cook as co-counsel. As company witnesses, we also have Nate Spriggs and Matthew Schellinger with us today.
Excellent. Thank you. Sir?
David Tibbetts.
You got to make sure you push
David Tibbetts, plaintiff, whatever, per se. President.
Gotcha. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Brock Miller on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. I am joined by Peggy Costello, also of the Office of People's Counsel, and OPC witness Lafayette Morgan.
Excellent.
Kenneth Albert on behalf of Commission staff, along with co-counsel James Greger.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, that was not on. Kenneth Albert on behalf of staff, along with James Greger.
Okay. All right, excellent. So, Mr. Bugelman, do you want to kick things off?
Sure, Your Honor. What I would propose, because we have a settlement agreement and stipulation in this case, is we could move through the exhibits. We could start by moving in the settlement agreement as a joint exhibit, and then we could run through the company's exhibits, and then Mr. Schellinger could take the stand and subject to cross and Your Honor's questions, if that process works for Your Honor.
Why don't we get all the exhibits in first,
okay,
and then we can go with the cross-examination, because my guess is Mr. Tibbetts is going to have some questions as well.
Okay, Your Honor. So to that end, let's start with the errata version of the joint stipulation and settlement agreement, which was filed on August 28th, 2024, consisting of 39 pages under mail log 311954.
All right, we'll mark that as joint exhibit 1 for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. Request to move the joint exhibit into evidence.
Any objections?
None, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Moving to the company's exhibits, just to make sure we're on the same page, I believe the certificate of publication for the pre-hearing conference, MWS Exhibit 1, is already in evidence.
I believe you're correct, sir.
So moving to the next exhibit, I would request to mark as MWS Exhibit 2, the application initially filed in this case and the associated proposed tariff pages, clean and redlined. That was filed on March 29th, 2024, consisting of 43 pages under mail log 308574.
All right, that'll be applicant Exhibit 2 for identification.
Thank you. Next, Your Honor, request to mark as MWS Exhibit 3, the direct testimony of Nathaniel Spriggs, also filed on March 29th, 2024, consisting of 25 pages under the same mail log number.
All right, that'll be 3 for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. MWS Exhibit 4, request to mark the direct testimony of Matthew Schellinger, also filed on March 29th, 2024, consisting of 106 pages inclusive of attachments.
All right, that'll be 4 for identification.
Thank you. MWS Exhibit 5, the request to mark the direct testimony of Matthew Howard, also filed on March 29th, 2024, consisting of 56 pages.
That'll be 5 for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. Request to mark as applicant Exhibit 6, the direct testimony of Scott Miller, filed on March 29th, 2024, consisting of 84 pages, inclusive of exhibits.
That'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is MWS Exhibit 7, a request to mark the direct testimony of Stephen Lubertozzi, filed on March 29th, 2024, consisting of 8 pages.
It'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. MWS Exhibit 8, I would request to mark the certificate of publication for the province's public comment hearing, which was filed on July 18th, 2024, consisting of 14 pages under mail log 310945.
That'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. MWS Exhibit 9, request to mark the certificate of publication for the Pinto and Highland Estates public comment hearing, was filed on July 18th, 2024, consisting of 10 pages, also under mail log 310945.
It'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. Request to mark as MWS Exhibit 10, the rebuttal testimony of Matthew Howard, filed on July 22nd, 2024, consisting of 106 pages inclusive of attachments, under mail log 311027.
It'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next is MWS Exhibit 11. I would request to mark the rebuttal testimony of Stephen Libertosi, also filed on July 22nd, 2024, consisting of 7 pages.
All right, it will be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. As MWS Exhibit 12, I request to mark the rebuttal testimony of Scott Miller, also filed on July 22nd, 2024, consisting of 67 pages.
All right, it'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. As MWS Exhibit 13, I request to mark both the confidential and public rebuttal testimony of Matthew Schellinger, also filed on July 22nd, 2024, consisting of 25 pages.
Why don't we do that as 13 and 13C
Sure.
for the confidential?
Yep, no objection. Thank you, Your Honor. Next is MWS Exhibit 14, a request to mark the signed affidavit compliance filing for the province's hearing, which we filed on July 25th, 2024, consisting of 6 pages.
It'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. As MWS Exhibit 15, I would request to mark the signed affidavit for the Pinto and Highland Estates hearing filed on July 29th, 2024, consisting of 5 pages.
That will be so marked.
Thank you. As MWS Exhibit 16, I would request to mark the certificate of publication for the Lakeside Vista and Green Ridge public comment hearing, which we filed on July 31st, 2024, consisting of 11 pages.
That will be so marked.
Thank you. As MWS Exhibit 17, I would request to mark the signed affidavit for the Lakeside Vista and Green Ridge public comment hearing, which we filed on August 6, 2024, consisting of 5 pages.
It'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. MWS Exhibit 18, I would request to mark the rebuttal testimony of Matthew Schellinger, filed on August 12, 2024, consisting of 3 pages under mail log 311612.
That'll be so marked.
Thank you. As MWS Exhibit 19, I would request to mark the company's amended application, which amended the effective date, the proposed rates in this case, which we filed on August 20th, 2024, consisting of 13 pages under mail log 311787.
All right, that'll be 19 for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then finally, as MWS Exhibit 20, request to mark the supplemental testimony in support of settlement of Matthew Schellinger, filed on August 30th, 2024, consisting of 9 pages under mail log 312024.
All right, that will be applicant 20 for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. With that, I would request to move MWS or applicant exhibits 2 through 20 into evidence.
Okay, any objections?
None, Your Honor.
No objection.
All right, hearing none, they're admitted. All right. All right, Mr. Miller?
Yes, Your Honor. I emailed, you received it?
Yep, I did,
great.
thank you.
So as to mark as OPC Exhibit 1, the direct testimony of Lafayette Morgan, consisting of 86 pages, filed on June 17th, 2024, as mail log number 310307.
That'll be OPC 1 for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. OPC Exhibit 2, direct testimony of Jerome Mirzwa, consisting of 79 pages, filed on June 17th, 2024, also as mail log number 310307.
That'll be 2 for identification.
OPC 3, direct testimony of David Garrett, 92 pages, also filed on June 17th, 2024, as mail log number 310307.
That'll be 3 for identification.
OPC Exhibit 4, rebuttal testimony of Lafayette Morgan, the public version, 43 pages, filed on July 22nd, 2024, mail log number 311033.
That'll be 4 for identification.
4C, rebuttal testimony of Lafayette Morgan, the confidential version, 77 pages, filed on July 22nd, 2024, mail log number 311033.
That'll be 4C for identification.
OPC 5, rebuttal testimony of Jerome Mirzwa, 12 pages, July 22nd, 2024, mail log number 311033.
That'll be 5 for identification.
OPC 6, rebuttal testimony of Lafayette Morgan, 52 pages, filed on August 12th, 2024, as mail log number 311617.
That'll be OPC 6 for identification.
OPC 7, rebuttal testimony of Jerome Mirzwa, the public version, 16 pages, filed on August 12th, 2024, mail log number 311617.
That'll be 7 for identification, and 7C will be the confidential
Correct, Your
version
Honor.
for identification.
OPC 8, rebuttal testimony of David Garrett, 10 pages, filed on August 12th, 2024, as mail log number 311617.
Be so marked.
And OPC Exhibit 9, supplemental testimony of Lafayette Morgan, consisting of 8 pages, filed on August 29th, 2024, as mail log number 312000.
All right, that'll be so marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to move OPC Exhibits 1 through 9 into evidence.
All right, any objections?
None, Your Honor.
All right, OPC Exhibits 1 through 9 are admitted.
Thank you, Your
Mr. Albert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Staff would ask to be marked as Staff Exhibit Number 1, the revised direct testimony filed by Christine DeMaster on July 5th, 2024.
That'll be marked Staff 1 for identification.
And we would ask to be marked as Staff Exhibit 2, Ms. DeMaster's surrebuttal testimony, which was filed on August 12th, 2024.
All right, it'll be so marked.
We have then Staff Exhibit Number 3 would be Eric Grainham's revised direct testimony,
All right,
which was filed on July 5th, 2024.
all right, that'll be 3 for identification.
And Exhibit 4 would be Mr. Grainham's surrebuttal, which was filed on August 12th, 2024.
All right, that'll be 4 for identification.
For the court reporter, Eric Grainham is ERIK, GRAN as in Nancy, UM as in Mary. And Christine DeMaster is CHRISTINE, and D is in dog, MASTER. We are now at Staff Exhibit 5. We would ask to be marked for identification the direct testimony of staff witness Drew McAuliffe. Which was filed on June 17th, 2024. That's DREW, M as in Mary, CAULIFFE.
That'll be 5 for identification.
And Mr. McAuliffe's surrebuttal, which was filed on August 12th, 2024. We would ask that be Staff Exhibit 6.
So marked.
Staff Exhibit 7, we would ask be marked as this is the direct testimony of staff witness Mark Riley, MARKRIELLY. There is a confidential and public version, so we'd ask that the public version be Staff Exhibit 7, and the confidential version be Staff Exhibit 7C.
All right, they're so marked.
And then Mr. Riley did file surrebuttal on August 12th, 2024. Again, there was a public version, which we would ask to be marked as Staff Exhibit 8. And there was a confidential version, which we would ask to be marked as Staff Exhibit 8C.
All right, they're 8 and 8C for identification.
We would ask that the revised direct testimony filed by staff witness Barbara Weber, that's WEBER, and Barbara BARBARA. We'd ask that revised direct testimony that was filed on July 9th, 2024, be marked as Staff Exhibit 9.
It'll be so marked.
And we have then staff filed testimony by Ms. DeMaster and Mr. Grainham on August 30, 2024, on the settlement. We would ask that be marked as Staff Exhibit 10.
Did you mean Ms. DeMasters and Mr. Riley?
I'm sorry, Mr. Yes,
All right,
yes.
just want to make sure.
Sorry.
All right, that'll be 10 for identification.
And that's it for staff's present
Any
evidence.
objection to staff 1 through 10?
None, Your
None, Your
Honor.
Honor.
All right. They're admitted. And before I forget, I will also admit bench data requests 1 and 2 as bench exhibits 1 and 2. All right. All right. Mr. Bugelmans.
Thank you, Your Honor. With that, I think Mr. Schellinger could take the stand. Call him as our first witness.
What's your pleasure? Well, I'll let you do it.
Good afternoon. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of perjury to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the testimony that you're about to give? I did. Did you spell your first and last name for the record?
Matthew Schellinger, M-A-T-T-H-E-W, S-C-H-E-L-L-I-N-G-E-R.
Thank you.
Do you want to do any opening?
I have no opening or live rejoinder, so the witness is
Okay.
available for cross-examination and your questions.
Okay. Mr. Tibbetts, you have any questions, sir? And just as a word of advice, the way we typically do things here, but I mean, we typically don't have these types of settlements. Usually everybody's on board, but that's fine. But in terms of questioning the witnesses, I'll let you question the witness, and then my guess is maybe Mr. Bugelmans will have some follow-up, and then I'll ask some questions, and then I'll allow the parties to ask follow-up questions based on mine. Okay, so if you have a question, ask it now, because you might not get another opportunity. Okay,
Gotcha.
sir?
Yes, sir. May I also want to make clear that I had.
You can sit down, sir. It's okay.
I was told I didn't have to do that. I'm just so used to court.
It's fine, sir. If you want to pull that mic just a little closer to you,
All right.
just so the court reporter's getting you.
Okay.
All right.
Am I hearable now?
I can hear you, yeah. So as long as the court reporter can hear you, that's the important thing.
So basically, I wanted to make clear that I had nothing to do with the.
You turned your mic off.
I turned it off. Okay. I had nothing to do with the email that Mr. Van Garden sent to you.
But I didn't think that you did. I wasn't attributing that to anyone. As the parties know, I received several unsolicited emails from customers. I did not reply to any of them, and I just forwarded them along for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, and I made sure I put on the Facebook page, don't do that.
Okay.
I'm sure I was paid much attention to.
It's okay, sir.
Okay. So, Mr. Schellinger? Okay, I'm referring to basically to your supplemental testimony of August 30th. And you stated, number one, you stated in the, in there on page 7 that the bill would be 140, the average bill would be $104.21 for Pinto water and $102.34 for Pinto sewer. Is that correct?
That's what it says?
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now, 104.21 plus 124.34 equals 206.55, which is noted as footnote 7 as the monthly bill compared to the adjoining community cited in the August 2024 Legislative District 1 delegation letter comment number 3004. How many gallons would need to be consumed in 1 month for a residential Pinto customer's bill to be 206.55?
I believe it's around 2,500 gallons.
2521. Okay. Number 3, using the EPA's guideline of 82 gallons of at-home daily consumption to the average American, do you know how many people 2,521 gallons of monthly consumption would represent?
Objection. There's no foundation for that statistic. It's not in the record. I've never heard that before.
What would be the average? How many? What would that?
Sir, yeah, why don't you try it? Why don't you rephrase it, sir?
Yes,
I'll
sir.
sustain the objection.
Okay. What would be the average consumption of a person per month?
In Pinto, it's around 2,500 gallons.
Okay. And how many people, okay,
Yeah, is that per person or per household?
That's per household.
Okay, and what do you define as a household? Is it just, what, one customer, one account?
Yeah, it would be one account or one premise in this case.
Okay, so you don't break it down by like 2 people, 4 people?
We don't have that data.
Okay, all right, thank you.
okay, well, again, I'm going to cite to the EPA data. The average, all these numbers I'm going to ask you are based on average family of 4. Are you familiar with Cresaptown, Maryland, and their water infrastructure?
I'm not.
Okay. Cresaptown has its water infrastructure serviced and managed by Allegheny County, whose water supply and sewer rates are published online. Going back to the monthly residential bill for Pinto on the consumption of 2,500 gallons per month, do you know what the average Cresaptown residential's customer's bill would be for water and sewer if they consumed 2,500 gallons a month?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Would 147.40 be reasonable?
Subject to check.
Okay. I'm willing to bring a calculator anyway. In the settlement agreement, what is the volumetric rate for Pinto residential customers?
Volumetric rate for Pinto residential customers, $21.63 per 1,000 gallons.
Okay. Do you know what the volumetric rate for Cresaptown is published online by Allegheny County?
I do not.
Would you think 815 gallons per 1,000 is after they have a base charge of $74 or $88? Would that be reasonable from your knowledge?
Objection. This is calling for hypotheticals, speculation
Well,
about
the answer
rates.
is he referred in his report to the adjacent community.
Where are you referring to, sir, in his report?
Page 7.
Page
the footnote.
7. All right, and you're saying he referred to what?
I'm referring in there to, he talked about the average bill of $207, which is slightly less than the, I'm trying to rephrase this. His note says, the company notes that the average Pinto combined water and sewer customer would see a monthly bill of $206.55, which is slightly less than the average
Okay.
207 bill cited for the adjoining
The
adjacent.
unspecified adjoining community.
Which is the adjoining committee?
All right, if you know, you can answer.
When we did the supplemental testimony, it was just an unspecified adjoining community with no additional information or data behind it.
Okay. Well, let's see. Considering, well, for Cresaptown, which is the adjacent community, considering this, are you surprised that 2,150 gallons would cost more for a Pinto customer than it would for a customer in the adjacent community?
Can you please restate that question?
Yes. What I'm asking is, the rate as published by Allegheny County, and which you referred to the rates in the adjoining community, was like 207, and that's just not so.
Objection. I mean, again, calling for speculation, mischaracterizing the testimony. The witness's testimony is referring to the District 1 delegation letter, which stated that the average bill of the adjoining community is $207. So it's responding to that. So going into detail about rates of other communities in the county is just irrelevant and just basically mischaracterizing what this is responding to and what it's trying to
I'll
do.
sustain it, but you can try again, sir.
Okay. May I argue on the objection a second?
Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, this whole argument is about affordability and and it's like basically you can see the numbers. It's like $507 versus, I mean, we'll get to that, but like basically, it's a vast difference in the rate compared to the neighborhood. In that, I I mean, that's what it comes down to. These are published rates, and if it wasn't taken into account, it's deficient analysis to start with.
But you're comparing a government-run system to a privately run system, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and none of the numbers you're talking about are in the record, though, correct?
Probably not, yeah.
Then I'll sustain the objection.
So, okay, now what? So, would you agree that your number about the customer, this still comes down to, you're saying that the number is like 200, that the equivalent, that you're saying that let me get your footnote again. You're saying that essentially the bill will be equivalent, and I'm just saying, I'm just raising an objection on the record that that's not so. And the failure to investigate that is an error in the report.
Okay, do you have a question, sir?
Well, yes. Would you agree that you should have analyzed the rates from the surrounding community or not?
No, I would not agree with that. We compared an average Pinto customer to an average customer as outlined in that report.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the average family. Do you know, what did you assume the average family was in Pinto?
We don't make any assumptions to the average family when designing rates,
Why is that?
because all that matters is the gallons of usage.
Well, then, how much would a family of 4 probably use? What,
I have no idea.
would 900,840 be reasonable, assuming for 38 month?
I don't think that would be reasonable, no. It sounds very high.
2,500 times 4?
That equals 10,000? I'm not sure the
Yeah,
question.
that
I
equals
apologize.
10,000. Actually, I was going to give you a lesser figure of 9,840.
I don't think it'd be fair to assume that Pinto's average is 1 person per household.
Well, I'm assuming. Well, thank you. I'm assuming there's that. The question was based on 4 people in a household.
But in Pinto, they only use 2,500 gallons a month. I apologize. I'm not sure I'm following you here.
Okay, my point is, you based on a per capita cost or per capita usage. I'm just asking you, what's the average household size? Because your bill is going to be much higher than that per household.
I'm still not following your question. I apologize.
Okay. You said the average consumption is 2,500 a month. So for a family of 4, is it reasonable to conclude that it would be 10,000 gallons a month?
No,
Why?
because that would assume that Pinto only has 1 person in each house.
I think we're having a failure to communicate here. Like, okay, your report said 2,500 people in a household for 2,500 gallons per month consumption.
Yes.
Okay, if the average household size is more than one person, it's going to be a multiple of 2,500.
No, the 2,500 is based on the actual usage in that community.
We have, thank you. So, for the settlement agreement, what would for a family of 4, what would they consume per month?
I don't have any data on the household size in the communities.
Do you think you should have?
No,
Why?
because it's irrelevant,
And why would it be irrelevant?
because we use the actual consumption and build usage and build revenues in those communities for designing rates.
Okay, thank you. And if a Crescent Town, if the nearby residential community, which is unnamed but is in reality Crescent Town, consumed 9,840 gallons a month, what would they pay?
I'm going to have to object to this. Again, we're making assumptions about neighboring communities. I think we've already established this footnote's responding to something very specific. The witness has already answered effectively this question multiple times.
Well,
In addition to
the
that,
answer would be $207.50 per month.
objection.
Sustained.
Your Honor, it's like the whole point of this is affordability and comparing apples to apples. And whether it's a municipal system or a private residential, the question is how much does it cost per household? And like what he's saying is it's $207 a month in Crescent Town versus, and that's all I'm trying to establish.
Okay, you've established that, sir.
Thank you, sir. And so basically, your stance is that the two numbers would be roughly equivalent to Pinto and to the Crescent Town.
Objection. Mischaracterizing his testimony. Again, this is a very limited footnote responding to something very specific, a number that was stated in the letter.
And he just said by calculation it would be essentially the same.
I'll overrule it. Can you answer the question, sir?
My footnote specifically addresses an average customer in Pinto to this unspecified average customer in an adjoining community.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to establish.
Do you know this average customer in the unspecified community, what their usage would be? Is it similar to Pinto?
I have
Or
no
do you-
idea.
No idea. Okay, thank you.
I'm not trying to beat the dead horse. So it's like fundamentally, you did not analyze the rates compared to the other communities, and you did not analyze a household basis. Is that
Objection. I'm going to have to object on relevance
And asked and answered.
and asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. Okay. Have you looked? Are you aware of the fact that the community has suffered a 79% increase since, if you add everything from the 2020 rate increase plus the increased surcharge, is a 79% increase reasonable, or do you agree with that?
Objection. If Mr. Tibbs wants to point to somewhere in the testimony or the record where there's numbers that establish this, he can ask the witness about those numbers. But I don't think he should be permitted to ask about just kind of throwing numbers out there and having our witness respond to them on the fly like that. This isn't tied to any piece of testimony he submitted, as far as I can tell.
I'll allow, there is testimony in the case about the previous rate case. So I'll allow you to explore it once you try and lay a better foundation, sir.
Yes, thank you. Are you familiar with the previous application or granting?
I was not involved in that case, but I've read through some of the materials associated with
Okay.
it.
How much was the total rate increase?
I'm not sure. I know it was spread out over 3 years, though.
Does 30% sound reasonable? 10% a year?
I have no idea.
Are you
what
talking
that
just for
increase
Pinto,
was.
sir?
Yes.
I'm not sure the outcome of
Okay.
each of the rate impacts from that rate case.
Okay. Are you familiar with the current pass-through charge?
I am.
What's that? What's that total?
I don't have the exact dollar amount in front of me. I believe it increased from $8.15 to the $10 range, somewhere around there.
Right. So, is it reasonable to have, why is it reasonable to have this increase on top of the other one that just finished?
As part of the settlement agreement, the pass-through will actually be consolidated into base rates across all of the customer base. So the pass-through would be going away as a component of the settlement agreement.
Okay, but let me ask it more. I think it was clear to start with, but let me ask directly, why is this application filed to start with? Why do you need another rate increase when you just finished one?
Sure. Across Maryland, we've continued to invest capital since our last rate case, I believe, to the tune of a little more than $4 million. Additionally, 30% of our rate increase is actually associated with the deferred revenue from the last rate case due to that phase-in. About 30% of the increase is coming from that. And then since 2021, we've seen probably some of the highest inflationary pressures in my lifetime, to be quite honest. And all of those are really the main drivers for needing to file this rate case.
How old are you? Just
Right.
I mean,
37.
okay, thank you.
I would parenthetically add, being 73, you should have seen the 70s.
I missed the 70s.
Well, yeah, chronologically sure, but there's, anyway.
All right, move along.
Yes, sir. Are you aware, in terms of, are you aware of the per capita income by county? Since you're having three different, let me lay a better foundation for that. You have three communities in different parts of the state. Have you looked at, and you gave the provinces a break on the rates? Why is that?
Objection, relevance. I don't think incomes are relevant.
Well, I don't think that's what he asked. He's asking why, if I understood your question,
Yes.
why provinces is getting only being moved 37% towards the volumetric rate? Is that-
Right.
You
So
can
the,
answer that.
yeah, the primary reason that provinces isn't moving to a full consolidated rate, it's really due to rate shock. Moving them to a fully consolidated rate would increase their volumetric component quite substantially. And in our current proposal, they're already receiving a near 75% increase.
Okay. And this probably is, so basically, why is it in the public interest to do that?
Rate consolidations in the public interest for a number of reasons. First of which is that each of the Maryland water services systems are relatively small, and having a consolidated customer base allows us to more efficiently deploy capital without it having undue negative impacts on really small communities. It will mitigate future rate shock as, say, provinces needs that next tranche of their capital. It's able to be better mitigated. There's absolutely a timing variable here where each community is kind of staggered a little bit, where they'll have capital needs coming up, but generally you see a staggering of those needs, and the communities are able to help support each other from that perspective. Additionally, we're able to defer future rate cases or spread out the need for that next rate case before it happens, whereas if, say, provinces was a standalone system and it needed any amount of capital, you're pretty much immediately needing a rate case at that point in time. So all of those reasons really help, or rate consolidation helps benefit all of those.
And this probably is not important, but why is the Highland Estates a separate system to begin with in Allegheny County? I think you've got 26 homes there or something?
I'm going to not speak to Highland Estates specifically, but I'll speak more to communities in general, and that's that a developer builds a subdivision and they don't want to be in the water and sewer business, so they find a water and sewer provider. And in this case, Highland Estates, the developer built 36 houses and found a water and sewer provider.
Okay. Just curious, because like, if anything cries out for consolidation, would seem to be at 26 homes. But, so, and it's, so you do not take, let me put it this way. Who is Maryland Water owned by?
Nexus Water Group.
Okay. Because in the testimony, they'd referred to Corsus, which used to own it.
In April, Corix and Southwest Water Company merged into a combined company, Nexus Water Group.
Okay. Thank you. I was just trying to get that clear in my own mind. Okay. Sorry, I had to put my glasses on.
You're fine, sir.
Growing old beats alternatives. So, in terms of consolidation, on the bigger picture, it's like the company is multinational. So, how do you draw capital from the? What's the relationship of your capital outlay to your subsidiaries?
I'm going to have to object to this. Mr. Tibbetts has been a party to this case, this entire case. He could have conducted discovery. He could have submitted testimony, and typically commission hearings, we don't use them as a substitute for discovery. These are questions that could have been asked throughout the entire proceeding, and it's just inappropriate in the context of a commission proceeding to ask questions that are this open-ended and almost random.
They are not random. It's like the whole issue about going back originally was return of capital in the preceding case. And number one, and number two, it's still, you're talking about rate consolidation for Maryland customers is highly relevant in the settlement. Even like how much money are you drawing for your, if you're going to consolidate?
All right, I'm going to sustain the objection. Okay, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to sustain the objection. Try to, rather than going through all the direct, you're here opposing the settlement.
Right.
I want you to attack the settlement and attack the supporting testimony, okay?
Okay. How much capital contribution, because that would be relevant to start, are you returning with this rate consolidation and this combination of communities? How would that affect your relationship for capital requirements from the multinational?
I'm not sure I'm following that question.
Okay. You said the settlement benefits the customers by allowing more efficient allocation of capital. How does that feed back to the main? And this is on the settlement entirely. How does that relate to your capital needs from your parent company?
I don't think there's any relation there. I'm once again not following that question, but maybe I'll make a more general statement, and that's that the local operational group identifies the capital needs that Maryland Water Service needs in each of the communities, right, in order to continue delivering safe, reliable, efficient service. And then the parent company provides the funds in order to make those necessary improvements in Maryland. So maybe that helps. I'm not really sure I'm following the direction.
Well, no, that's exactly what I was looking for. It's like you're not a standalone company. You have a parent company. I was trying to see how the settlement affects the relationship financially between the two.
It has no impact on the relationship.
Okay, that's really just what I want to know. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
No cross for this witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Albert?
No cross by staff.
Any redirect, Mr. Bugelmans?
I have no redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Good afternoon, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to try and go through your testimony, so I'm not jumping around. To the extent I do, I apologize. Page 3, you talk about the elimination of the bulk water pass-through, unaccounted for water, and the unaccounted for water reporting. So whenever Allegheny County, the city of Cumberland, will increase the rates, provinces and Green Ridge will also be sharing in those costs.
Correct.
How often are the county and the city increasing their rates?
Generally, municipalities increase annually. in the July 1 timeframe. That's usually when they establish their budgets.
Okay. And in response to a data request, the company confirmed that provinces in Green Ridge have no similar pass-throughs because they have wells. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So if I'm a provinces in Green Ridge customer, tell me how this makes sense that I'm paying for water that I'm not benefiting from.
Sure. I think the key to making that make sense is to also think the Highland Estates and Pinto are paying for the other costs of Green Ridge's supply, for instance, which would be chemicals, purchase power, those sorts of items, right? So there's all of the costs of supplying water. It's not just the purchased water that's part of those supply costs. And as we hit consolidated rates and consolidated revenue requirements, you're kind of throwing all that into the big bucket. So
as it currently stands, do Highland Estates and Pinto, are they on the hook for any of those costs that you just referenced for Green Ridge and provinces?
yes, they are.
They are. So they're currently on the hook for processing chemicals and things like that, whereas it's not vice versa. They're not on the hook for any kind of bulk water increases.
Additionally, if I may, they also have the additional rate base generally of the wells themselves and that sort of thing as well. It's not just the expenses.
Right. So the UFW reporting, unaccounted for water, that goes away completely, correct?
That's my understanding.
What's the benefit of not continuing to look at the unaccounted for water?
I think internally we'll continue to look at the unaccounted for water. We generally keep an eye on water loss across all of our systems because it helps us identify the needs and deploy capital as it's necessary.
So it'll continue to be monitored, but you're just not going to report it to the commission? Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding.
All right. And you know, it's probably before your time, but do you know why the reporting requirement was instituted?
I do not.
Do provinces in Green Ridge have similar unaccounted for water charges, if you know?
Charges?
Or like surcharges where the company will go back and collect, you know, this is water that we lost, that didn't pass through the meter.
My understanding is that Pinto has, a credit and Highland Estates had a surcharge in the most recent filing. And
Sure.
that may be incorrect.
Well, do provinces and Green Ridge, do they have similar unaccounted for water provisions in their tariffs?
They do not have
They do
any
not.
similar.
All right.
And if I may, just
Sure.
a bit more, generally when it's non-purchased water systems, the cost of that unaccounted for water is very low. It's just the incremental chemical or purchase power.
All right, so moving to page 4 of your testimony, sir, it talks about moving the province's residential customers 37% towards the consolidated volumetric rate. So since they're only being moved 37%, is it fair to say that in the company's next rate case, provinces is going to see, the company's going to request a pretty significant increase for provinces to fully consolidate it?
I don't want to say that we request full consolidation. We'd have to make that determination when we're kind of putting together the next rate case, because it may make more sense to go incremental again, closer, but not all the way.
But in this case, in the last case, you sought full consolidation.
I believe in this case we did not. We wanted full consolidation of the revenue requirement, but we still had provinces customers at a lower volumetric,
Okay.
even in this case in my initial filing.
Okay. All right, moving on to page 5. On line 9, you reference, and you're talking about the public interest aspect of consolidating the rates. On line 9, you state, charging customers different rates due to historical segregation of systems fails to recognize the singular ownership and consolidation of operations of the systems and risks confusion to customers. What confusion to customers are you referencing?
I think the main risk of confusion to customers comes from the tariffs specifically. And that'd be like if I'm a Green Ridge customer and I go to the commission website or the Maryland Water Service website and I pull the tariff, it's a big tariff. It has a lot of different provisions in it. There's a provinces section and a Pinto section and a Highland Estates section. And I think that's the primary risk of confusion, is not being able to adequately identify what rates you should be getting charged in your communities.
Okay, so it's literally just, you believe it's just finding those, what you're being charged?
In my experience, that's been the
In your
primary.
experience,
yeah.
okay. Is there anything in this case, based on, say, the public hearings, I believe you went to at least?
Every one of them.
Yeah, so, did you see any potential confusion from the customers on their rates?
Not that I recall.
Okay, thank you. All right, on line 12, you reference consolidating customer rates also provides rate smoothing benefits. What exactly do you mean by that, sir?
Sure. This is really in reference to what I said earlier about consolidation, which would be, that next incremental tranche of capital happening in any given system and it being able to be spread out among the larger group. The rate smoothing you'll see really is something that's going to happen over time, right, over the next 10, 15, 20 years as these systems are consolidated. When Highland Estates needs that next, $200,000 something that gets spread out over only 36 customers, that would not result in smooth rates, right? So having a larger customer base in order to spread out those changes will provide that rate smoothing.
So it's more just essentially gradualism? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, and you also reference on line 16 mitigating rate impacts. So if I'm a province's residential customer in this case, how is this settlement mitigating rate impacts for me? Or is that something I can look forward to in 10, 15, 20 years?
I think in the current case, you're probably not seeing a whole lot of it for that customer base, but it really is, like I said, a concept of time. Every system needs capital eventually. That's just the nature of it.
Page 6, sir, on line 6, you give an example with Pinto and Highland Estates, and you state that without rate consolidation, the revenue requirement for Pinto and Highland Estate water customers would have been $152,503 higher. Where does that number come from, sir?
That number comes from some internal workbooks that I had going as we were working through these numbers.
Okay.
Basically, we had the original. I think in the original application we had 3 sets of revenue requirements, right, for each and 3
Right.
sets of cost of service studies. So that's kind of how you get back to those bridges.
Well, okay, so based on your example, so their rates would be approximately 11% higher. But based on and I'm looking at the residential rate impacts that were provided in response to Bench DR1, and I think I'm going to go with that. There's a lot of charts out there. It was kind of hard to follow.
Sure.
And if I'm looking at the right one, it looks like it's settlement rates after the 8/15/2024 charge or change in bulk water surcharge. Do you have it in front of you, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the average Green Ridge has seen a 37% increase, correct?
Correct.
Average Provinces is 75%. Average Highland is negative, so they're going to see a decrease, -9%. And then Pinto is seeing a 4% increase. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure those are the numbers I'm working from. So even if they did see an 11% increase, they're still well below the other systems, correct?
Correct.
So the benefits from rate consolidation are essentially a long-term, won't be realized over the short term. Is that fair?
I mean, it could be realized over the short term. There's no promise that provinces' wells won't go out tomorrow and need extensive rehabilitation, capital investment, everything else, and then the next rate case, it could flip for provinces.
Sure. Now, again, on page 6, you state that in the long term, consolidated rates will strengthen the company and allow customers to enjoy lower rates via fewer rate cases. And you've thrown out the time periods 10, 15, 20 years. Is that what customers can look towards in terms of the long-term benefits of the consolidation?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable statement.
So fewer rate cases. So what does the company currently have plans on its next rate case?
Not explicit plans, but we generally monitor our projected capital improvements coming up over the next 3 to 5 years, as well as, any operational changes we may know about as regards to chemicals or if we know that we have power increases coming from vendors, that sort of thing. So we kind of keep an eye on it, but not explicit plans.
Okay, so there's nothing in the company's mind right now saying, all right, we're going to come in on this date and.
Well, we generally know about how often we do need a rate case, and that's in the 2 to 3 year range.
Okay.
For sure.
So in the stay out provision in the settlement, it's 1.5 years or 1.5 years, and that's until the rates become effective. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's essentially an 11-month stay out because you could file, 180 days before the rates become effective. Is that
Without doing the math, that sounds about right.
Ballpark.
Yes.
So okay. But you would anticipate potentially coming back in 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
All right. One of the other benefits that's referenced is lower rate case expenses. As you sit here, can you provide an estimate of what those savings might look like?
So I'm optimistic in the next rate case that we won't have to do 4 cost of service studies. That alone, if we can not need a higher cost of service expert, that I believe that's 40 to 50 grand right there, especially if they have to go to hearing and everything else.
And is that where you see the main savings, sir?
I think that's going to be the main savings. The other side of the savings would be if they're all unconsolidated and Highland needs that capital, then I would file a rate case for Highland, right? And then provinces needs capital, I'm filing a rate case for provinces. So the other side of the savings is not needing to file 4 separate rate cases and just filing rate cases every 6 months in order to cover all 4 of these. That's the other side of the savings for sure.
There were a couple NARUC resolutions that were cited in Mr. Spriggs's testimony, and one of the savings was potentially getting rid of outside counsel. And I'm not trying to put you guys out of business or anything, but is there a potential for, and I can see if I can find that for you. Is there a potential to move in-house counsel as a potential savings?
I mean, I think there's, in theory, potential. I think it's very hard, especially for something the size of MWS, to have an in-house counsel who understands the specific Maryland jurisdictional system, right? Because I don't know that there's any actual economies of scale there to have someone in-house who understands just Maryland, right? It's, if we were larger, maybe, but not at the current size.
Okay, thank you, sir. And just so everyone's on the same page, I'm looking at Exhibit NS2 to Mr. Spriggs's direct, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th whereas paragraph down. Does the company have an anticipated level of savings if the consolidation goes through?
No.
No.
And if I may, I think,
Sure.
like I said, most of that savings from consolidation comes from the avoided rate cases, right? It's not like an explicit saving, it's the avoidance of some future cost.
All right. Skipping down to 16, you start talking about the consolidation for provinces' residential customers. And you're only moving them 30%, 37% of the way for the volumetric rate. And this is done to address rate shock. Now, again, I'm a provinces customer, and I'm looking at if I'm a small customer, it's 72%. If I'm a large residential customer, it's an 80% increase. Does that constitute rate shock in your mind? An 80%, a 72 to 80% increase?
It doesn't, and I think it's important to consider where they started or where they're starting. And I think province's current volumetric rate is exceptionally low. So even while the raw percent may seem like a large percent, the actual volumetric rate they're moving to is, I apologize, let me find it real quick, $7.90, I believe, which is, in terms of a raw volumetric rate, it's not that out of line, I would think.
Right, but the overall increase is anywhere from 72 to 80%.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
It's fine. That does not offend me at all. All right, and now Highland Estates and Pinto, Pinto's barely getting an increase, and Highland's getting a decrease. Again, I'm a province customer. How is that fair?
I think really it goes back to all of the points we just talked through regarding the benefits of consolidation. And, at some level right now, it may feel unfair, but that doesn't mean that it is unfair, especially going into the next rate case or needing that next capital investment.
All right. Skipping ahead to page 8 of your testimonies, you talk about the PFAS testing expenses. Do you know what the status of that litigation is, sir?
I do not have the specifics on the status of that litigation.
Do you have an idea or an estimate as to how much the company's expended for the testing so far?
Maryland Water specifically, I believe we have an adjustment for that amount, so we could use that as a proxy for the number. Let's see if I can find it quickly without spending. Yes, sir. In my direct testimony exhibit MPS 6, which is my summary of adjustments, it's adjustment number 12.
Okay, thank you, sir. And do you have a dollar figure?
Yes, $29,160. And the actual work paper has that split out between the different systems.
Okay, but at this point, you have no idea what the final, an estimate as to what the final figure is going to be?
That's just the amounts that we spent for the testing expense.
Right.
The actual amounts for PFAS mitigation or future testing, I don't have those amounts. I don't want to throw Mr. Spriggs under the bus, but he may have something better for you.
All right, the public comments. You noted you were at all 3 hearings. All right, there were several customers who noted their bills were $300, $400, sometimes even $500 per month. Is the company concerned that with another increase that there comes a point where this is going to be unsustainable for customers?
I think generally we always have that concern. We don't take any rate increase lightly, and we do it because I think, as we've shown here, we have a real deficit in our revenues and need the rate increase. I don't know where that tipping point is, though.
All right. Another thing that was referenced a few times was the quality of the water. There were numerous complaints that it was brown, it was orange, staining the toilets, staining showers, that it was blue and smelled like chlorine, and the filters were black when they were changed. How do you respond to customers that, in their mind, they're getting, and these are my words, substandard water? Okay, it doesn't taste good, it doesn't look good, but yet the company's wants another increase.
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that. I don't have a lot of the specifics on the operations on that side of it. I believe Mr. Spriggs might be able to answer some of that, though.
All right. Would that be the same for some of the customers talked about having to repeatedly flush their systems when they're notified by the company? Is that something beyond your?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Finally, did you read Ms. Weber's testimony?
I did quite a while ago.
It's fine. She noted that there were low levels of radium-226 and 228 and cadmium in the province's water system. And I didn't see any reference, any response to that. What's the company's, do you have any response to the?
So Mr. Spriggs might be able to answer it more specifically, but I would say that it's being tested. This is a more general statement, not to that specifically, but it would be getting tested regularly and it would be in compliance. Otherwise, there'd be a project going on currently in order to address and filter out those substances.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Don't go anywhere. Mr. Tibbetts, do you have any questions based on mine?
Yes, excuse me. Very simple. It's like in the, and I'm using this example from my community just to make the specific point. It's like last summer we had a fecal coliform outbreak. So they had to shut down the water system for a while. Also with these other unforeseen problems like contamination, just generally, it's like how do you price those?
Objection. There's no foundation for these questions.
Yes, there is.
What is it? Because he wasn't able to respond to my questions. It may be better. Mr. Spriggs might be able to respond, but
He lists the site. You addressed the site of unforeseen problems coming up, maintenance problems. PFAS contamination is the same type of issue as fecal coliform.
is it?
Well, it's like an unforeseen. There's system integrity.
Okay.
So
One
that's
difference is my question's based on the settlement, and
Right.
it's based on the testimony. Yours is assuming some other issue.
Well, I'll take the question generically.
Yeah. If you want to try a different way, go ahead.
Yes. So for unforeseen problems like public health or public health problems or maintenance problems like the flushing of the mains, which was mentioned, how are they accounted for in your pricing structure?
I will not be following the question.
Okay, if you have I have to use the word fecal coliform outbreak, you have to shut down your system for 2 weeks. That cost money is correct. How are those costs accounted for?
Objection. Speculative scenario.
You don't give a credit for customers when there's a shutdown. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or if they have to flush their system.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I have no follow-up. Mr. Spriggs is available as a witness later.
Gentlemen?
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Based off your questions, we could call Mr. Spriggs as our next witness.
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth
you doing, sir?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Just to follow up on the water quality issue, and I know you were at the public hearings as well, when there were complaints of brown water, orange water, that it smelled like chlorine, was blue, and the filters were always black when they were changed. How do you respond to the customers who are experiencing this quality of water and you're seeking yet another increase?
Well, sir, so one of the things I require throughout the Mid-Atlantic is I have what's called a field activity report. There we go. Is that better? Thank you. Yes, sir, it's on now.
Could you repeat that?
Yes. So one of the things I require is for my various companies to monitor water systems through a field activity report, which comes to me monthly. And I view that, I monitor that, in which I have calls with my entire team twice a month on a Thursday. And we look at these reports. And the numbers that I'm seeing are on average 1 or 2 customers a month that may complain. But also, we test our water, like Mr. Schellinger mentioned. So we have daily requirements for water testing as well as monthly, and they are sent into the MDE, and we're in compliance with all the regulatory requirements and the law here in the state of Maryland.
So you have daily reporting requirements to MDE?
We have daily daily requirements, but we send them in monthly.
Okay.
So we record daily and we record monthly, and we process that through Chesapeake Bay Labs here in Maryland.
Okay. Have there been issues that would explain the brown, the orange, the blue water? It smells like chlorine.
Oftentimes, well, not oftentimes. Sometimes, we do fire. We flush our systems, and between flushing, some of that water can get discolored because of sitting in the system for a period of time. So then we come out, we flush the system out to move that water along and clean out the line. So that's typically what happens.
So how often are customers being told to flush their systems? There were some issues or concerns raised during the public hearings.
So we do a public outreach, and when that happens, that comes across my desk as well. I'm very involved for all 4 states, and I may have seen that in my time with the company maybe twice. And that was due to main breaks. So once the main breaks, once we repair it, we flush the system out to make sure no sediments was in that system.
Okay, so if I recall correctly, customers were saying that they got a call from the company saying, hey, you need to flush your system. And you're saying that only happened twice in the past how long?
Well, I've been with the company for about 10 months. So.
10 months.
Yes, sir. So, and they were due, if I remember correctly, to just water main breaks, water line breaks, and things like that.
And when a customer flushes their system, do you have a ballpark guesstimate as to how many gallons that uses up?
I do not.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
In response to Ms. Weber's testimony on the low levels of radium 226, 228, and cadmium, what is what is your response to that, or what's the company doing?
My response to that is that we're in compliance with the water quality here in the state, and we're meeting all the standards.
Okay. Are those elements, are they naturally occurring, or?
I have no idea, sir. I would refer that to our engineer. And, yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, don't go anywhere.
Yes, sir.
Any questions based on mine?
No questions.
Mr. Tibbetts?
Yes, just very briefly. For something that is something irregular that needs treatment, like say a fecal coliform shutdown of a pumping station or the water flushing in mains, how frequently can you predict those costs basically? If so, is it coming? Has that been built into the rates?
I think that was answered already. No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about a credit. I'm talking about your maintenance schedule is built into your basic rates, basically.
Are you asking me if our maintenance team is paid out of the rate schedule? Is that what you're asking me? If
Yes.
the salaries are? Yes.
Okay. That's what. I used to be in the service business, so I understand.
I'm sorry, I just misunderstood your question. I apologize.
Is that all you have, sir?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No questions, Your Honor?
No questions from staff.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, sir.
All right. All right. We'll call Mr. Mo-
OPC, sure, Your Honor. OPC calls Lafayette Morgan to the stand.
How you doing today, sir? Mr. Tibbetts, you have any questions before I start? I don't have a ton for Mr. Morgan, but want to give you the opportunity.
Nothing really.
Okay, all right.
If I do, I just ask, just may have the opportunity if something comes up.
If something comes up based on mine, yes.
Right.
But if not, then no.
That's, I got that.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Been around the block several times.
Okay, all right. Sir, you state on page 6 of your testimony that the terms of the settlement agreement reflect a reasonable compromise of the issues in the case, which will produce rates that are just and reasonable when considered collectively. And what do you mean by considered collectively?
I mean, when you look at okay, wasn't on, I'm sorry. The positions of the parties to the settlement, in order to reach a compromise, each of us coming together to reach a compromise is what I meant collectively. Some of us had to give up something that we wanted. The company did as well.
Okay, so just more of the parties' positions.
Right.
So if I'm a Province's customer, and again, you're going to see this theme. How are these rates just and reasonable for me? And how is a 72 to 80% increase not rate shock?
Sir, I am not the rate design witness. I looked at it from the overall company cost of service, and so to reach where I would say is just and reasonable means that we've looked at areas where we could reduce costs, and we did what we could to reduce costs. And so to the extent that the numbers turn out to be what they are, is the best way I can say that they're just and reasonable.
So it's just and reasonable because that's how the rates are designed, based on the revenue requirement?
Again, I'm not the rate design witness.
You would agree that's a large increase, though, would you not?
Yes,
And I believe you were in the previous rate case, is that correct?
that's correct.
All right. And there was a pretty sizable increase in that case as well, is that your
That's-
recollection?
That's my recollection.
And that one was phased in, correct?
That is correct.
Right. But this one's one lump sum,
Rate increase, yes.
and phasing in an increase is one way to mitigate the rate impact on customers. Is that fair to say?
That's fair.
Based on what you've seen in the past two cases and how these rates are being moved for Province's customers, they're only being moved part way, would you anticipate seeing another large increase for that particular customer, that system?
Based on this case and the previous case and the fact that this is a small company, I wouldn't rule that out, but there's no way that I can predict what a future rate case
Sure.
might look like.
Understood, that's fair. And the just and reasonableness of the rates, if I'm a Highland customer, I'm happy, I'm getting a discount, or a decrease, right? But if I'm Provinces, I'm paying 70 to 80%. How is that fair for all these customers that are trying to be consolidated?
Again, I'll preface my response by saying I was not the rate design witness. And so what I would say is that the rates started out not at the same place. And so as a result, there will be some disparity in terms of the ultimate rates for each subdivision or each service area within the company. But just and reasonableness, I think it's standard of looking at what is correct. There were no instances where corners were cut in an effort to reduce costs. We did what we could to determine what the actual costs were. And as I said earlier, in instances where we could make adjustments, we did. But to the extent that what we ended up with is what we believe to be the cost of service, we make the statement that it's just and reasonable because they're based on true numbers.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions based on mine?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Tibbetts?
Do you think the rates for Pinto and the other Allegheny County system are just and reasonable?
Again, I was not the rate design witness. The scope of my examination was to look at the company as a whole. My colleague looked at the rate design, and so to the extent that he accepted those as just and reasonable, I have to accept his opinion, and so I will have to say, based on his opinion, yes.
Okay, but based on his opinion as opposed to your personal knowledge?
I was not a rate design witness in this case, so I can't give you my personal opinion.
Thank you. That's fine.
No,
Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Why don't we do Ms. Weber? I think she'll be relatively quick.
Okay. Staff would call it to the stand. Staff Engineer Barbara Weber.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the testimony that you're about to give? I do. Could you please state and spell your first and last name?
First name Barbara, B-A-R-B-A-R-A. Last name Weber, W-E-B-E-R.
Thanks for being here, ma'am. I appreciate it. You state on page 2 that the company is currently in compliance with the state and federal drinking water regulations, and you describe your visits to the various systems. Can you just tell me, you go to a system, what does that visit, what's that inspection look like?
Oh, basically, I usually meet with the operations staff. In this case, it's usually Chris Lawson from MWS. We go from plant to plant. I look at all of the infrastructure, the tanks, the treatment, the wells. Might go out into the system. I'll look at all of the tanks, circle them, make sure there's no major issues. And in the water plant, I will look at all their records. They usually have MDE's monthly operating report form on site, and there's usually a daily log, and I'll just flip through and just look and make sure that everything meets standards. And I did work for the Department of the Environment, so I'm familiar with their regulations.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, and Mr. Spriggs talked about the monthly reporting requirements. And I think you probably, did you watch any of the public hearings or read the transcripts?
I watched a little of the provinces.
Okay, that was a good one. And did you hear complaints about the quality of the water? Or do you recall brown water, orange water?
I don't recall. Was that the provinces, the brown water?
I think it was both. I think it was provinces and Laval.
So regarding provinces, there's naturally occurring water in the aquifer, and MWS has filters that remove the iron.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the last time I was there, I watched them replacing the filter media, and that can improve the quality.
Okay, and is that typically what causes, at least in, I guess, provinces and potentially Green Ridge?
Green Ridge would be, I guess Green Ridge could have it in their system, but they don't filter for iron. So the only thing Green Ridge could do would be to flush to remove sediment.
Okay. The levels of radium and cadmium you referenced, do you know if those are naturally occurring, or do you have an idea how they were getting into the water supply?
Yeah, they are. They're naturally occurring in the aquifer. And I believe one of the wells for the province is well number 1. Even in MDE's site, they call it the cadmium well. So I think one of the wells has even higher levels than the others, and they have to be careful to blend to make sure they don't exceed the limits.
Okay. When you say blend, is that just the water coming out of wells 1 and 2? Or?
Exactly. Yeah, you'd have to run them at the same time.
Okay. But to your knowledge, they're below the limits set by the government?
Yep, I didn't see any violations.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Is there any questions for Ms. Weber based on mine?
Yes. Are you familiar with this similar statistics and data for Pinto and Holland Estates?
Maybe some of the data, I'm not sure what you mean by statistics.
Well, from the data, it's like, are there basically groundwater natural radiation occurring there, or is there PFAS, or can you talk to that?
But their water's purchased from Cumberland.
Cumberland, right.
And they come from, I don't know if you're familiar with Cumberland, but they're from surface water, Lake Gordon and Lake Coons.
Right.
And Cumberland does all the treatment. And then I believe they sell to the county, and then there's an interconnection between the county and the Pinto system.
Right, I'm aware of that. I just was saying, is everything up? Okay.
Yes, as far as I could see, Cumberland didn't have any violations.
Thank you.
Mr. Albert?
No follow-up there.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Weber.
Staff witness Mark Riley.
Are you going to call? I think I probably have more questions for Mr. Master than more so than the revenue requirement issues.
So then we'll ask Mr. Master.
I'm assuming you're Mr. Master.
Yes, Mr. Master, take a stand.
Mr. Tibbetts, you have any questions for Mr. Masters?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So again, I'm a province customer. See a common theme. A 75% increase for an average province's customer, coming on the heels of a significant increase in the last rate case. How is this not rate shock?
It could be considered rate shock, certainly. I think to put it in context, there are several things that I would point to. First is that the application and the separate cost of service studies originally submitted by MWS indicated about a 42% overall increase in revenues that would be needed for provinces under a standalone system. I would also point to, I know there's a lot of focus on the percentages.
Can I
Yes.
go back to that? So
Sure.
if provinces required a 42% increase, but they're getting a 75% increase, are you saying that could be evidence of rate shock? Is that what you're saying? I don't want to, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
I'm comparing it to what they would have gotten under standalone to say, yes, it is higher.
Okay, so standalone,
it's
they're
not
doing
out of-
better.
They, sure.
In this case.
Exactly, yes,
Okay,
that is
great.
true.
Thank you.
That's
All right, that's
acknowledgeable,
what I was-
yes.
all right.
I know there's been a lot of focus on the percentages. I just would point out to, in my testimony for the settlement, if you look at dollar amounts of the rates and the increase in the dollar amounts per month, provinces would go from about $41.04 per month bill currently to $71.87 with the proposed rates. And that's actually similar to the dollar.
Can you point me to where you're
Sorry.
looking, ma'am?
I'm looking on page 11, the chart.
My page 11 doesn't have a chart. Does your page 11 have a chart?
Yes, Ron. The joint testimony for.
Yes, the joint testimony for settlement. Is that the same?
Mine doesn't have, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Are there any charts that show the rate impacts in yours?
All right, so let me, all right, so I'm looking at sewer design. Is it the proposed rates settlement? Is that chart, ma'am?
Customer bill impacts under proposed rates.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My leg's going. All right, so you're looking at table 2.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this last one here.
This one right here.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so.
So roughly a $30 per month bill impact for the province's customers, which is actually similar to, for example, the Greenridge customers, which would be moving from currently $85.31 to $116.67.
All right. So you're more focused on the actual dollar amounts than the percentages?
I think
So-
both need to be taken into consideration, yes.
All right. But you agree that 75% is a large increase?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me pull up your, I'm going to pull up your testimony so we're working off the same sheet of music. I apologize for the delay. Mr. Albert, what day was this filed on?
I'm sorry, the staff testimony on the settlement,
Yes.
that was August 30th.
30th?
Yes.
For some reason, my version doesn't match up. Yeah, okay. All right. On page 8. On the bottom of page 8, line 20, you're discussing Pinto and Highland State increases, and you note that both systems are earning higher than the indicated amounts in the consolidated cost of service, but they're still benefiting from moving towards consolidation?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And is that benefit the decrease for Highland Estates and the slight increase for Pinto?
Yes, that's reflected in those numbers.
So the bill impacts for Highland Estates and Pinto, we've talked a little bit about it. How do you marry that up, a decrease for Highland Estates and a very slight increase for Pinto versus the 30 some odd percent that Green Ridge is receiving, 37% and the 75% for provinces?
And that is mainly the impact of having the purchased water included in the expenses for rates that are charged to all the customers moving forward. I would point out, too, that Highland Estates is, their bill would stay about where it is today before that latest increase in the purchased water. So the 10% decrease is relative to where they would be if that stayed separate, if that piece of the rate stayed separate. And at the same time, they are paying more than they would under this proposal than if you completely consolidated the rates for all customers. So it's a balance between what they would pay if it was completely consolidated versus this proposal, which moves provinces partway towards consolidation and still keeps the rates for those other customers in the other systems a little bit higher than they would be.
And to bring provinces to full consolidation, they're still going to need another significant increase. Is that fair to say?
I mean, that's likely. One thing I did want to point out on that, so the fixed charges under this proposal would be completely consolidated, so that piece of it wouldn't have to move. A big part of that increase for provinces this time is that movement from, I think it was $23 roughly per month for the fixed charge up to the 35 or 31, sorry. That step won't be needed next time. The other thing I want to point on the volumetric side, the rates under the settlement are set for provinces at 37% of what the rates are for the other residential customers, correct? Right. So if, as you move everybody towards consolidated rates in a next rate case, that rate for those other residential customers could be lower if you moved provinces completely to a consolidated rate. So that gap is not necessarily as large as it appears based on this rate case, if that makes sense. If they were all paying the same rate, they wouldn't be paying the $21.63. They'd be paying something lower.
So, in theory, they may not need as large of an increase as that, even though they're only moved. There's another 63% below the volumetric rate. That increase may not be as great.
Because that's just the volumetric rate, and that volumetric rate is a moving target as you consolidate.
I'm sorry I have to do this. Talk about the previous rate case. So in 9617 or 9671, excuse me, Pinto and Highland Estates were consolidated. Does it make more sense to consolidate them since they're geographically closer than throwing a system out in Hartford County and a system in Allegheny County or Anne Arundel County?
I guess that's one way to look at it. I did not take that approach.
I'm just,
no,
I'm just curious. I don't.
In one, what I was looking at here is that the MWS is providing essentially the same service to these customers. They're on separate systems. They have different facilities to provide that service, but they're all receiving essentially the same service, right? And so rates don't have to take that into account in order to be reasonable. Rates can be reasonable if you're charging the same price to customers that are making similar use of the system.
Talking about the public interest, you reference mitigating rate spikes as a benefit.
Right.
That's, and as I discussed with Mr. Schellinger. All right, I'm sorry. What's the correct pronunciation? Schellinger. My apologies, sir. Mitigation rate spikes is something that will happen in the future. Is that fair to say?
Yes, for some of the customers, yes, that will be more of a future benefit than a current, yes.
Right. And not knowing when you couldn't provide an estimate as to when customers would see such benefits.
No, I'm certainly
Right.
not in a position to do so.
That's all right. You cite the NARUC resolution, and it is on page 17, ma'am. And there's 4 best practices there that you referenced, but you emphasized C, allowing consolidation of rates, multi-divisional water quality or water utility, to spread capital costs over a larger base of customers. Is there a reason why you didn't look at the other 3, which are rate case phase-ins, innovative payment arrangements, and targeted customer assistance programs?
I did look just in my own work papers at rate case phase-ins. There are a couple ways to do that. Well, there's many, many ways you could do that, certainly. If you kept, for example, provinces' rates the same or increased them less than what was proposed here, that would either mean increasing the rates for other customers to generate the same amount of total revenue, right? Or phasing in the overall rate increase, similar to what was done in the last rate case, which resulted in this rate case having to catch up some prior costs. So the option of increasing rates for other customers now and then decreasing them over a period of years did not seem like a reasonable way to approach this, to set their rates even higher right now. And the other approach would result in some delayed revenues and further makeup in a future rate case. So I did take a preliminary look at that.
All right. But in your mind, and I realize it's a settlement, but the phased increase that was done in 96-71, it's not, I guess, as good an idea in this one, in this
Correct,
case?
yes.
You, in reference to 96-71, or I'm sorry, so on page 18, you talk about 96-71, and you state that you acknowledge that the 75% increase is significant, but then you compare it to the 208% increase that was requested by the company in the last rate case. Why is that a relevant comparison?
Just pointing out that the primary objection to consolidation as a concept was the magnitude of the rate increase last time. And so we're talking about a quite a bit smaller rate increase for provinces in this case. So the record last time to me indicated support for consolidation. It was more a matter of how do you structure the rates to accomplish that.
Is that the same kind of issue today?
Yes, I think so. I support consolidation as I indicated in my testimony. It is a matter of how do you accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what the level of increase for provinces customers was in 96-71?
I do not know that offhand.
Mr. Bugelmans, do you know that? Oh.
I do not know that number off the top of my head. We could certainly look it up and provide a bench data request response.
Yeah, if you could do that,
Okay.
please. I'm looking at percentages. I think I was able to see the dollar figure in the previous order, but I couldn't figure out. I couldn't find/figure out what that percentage.
It's probably
is.
somewhere in the record, and we can dig it up for you.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right. Take your time. Let me know when you're ready. We're just about done. thank you, sir. No apology necessary. All right. Ma'am, I just have one last question for you. On page 19 of your testimony, you state, as demonstrated in the public interest to eventually fully consolidate rates, as is supported by the record in this case, the record in the prior case, 9671, and other rate cases in Maryland. What other rate cases are you referencing, ma'am?
I have not reviewed other rate cases in Maryland.
Okay.
I've been informed by staff attorneys that that is the case.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I think that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions based on mine?
Yes, yes, you referred to the rate increases for Pinto particularly as being a really slight increase compared to what?
Compared to what Pinto customers pay currently with the additional purchased water increase that was just applied for.
As I understand it, it could be potentially be a 33% increase.
No, that is not what is being proposed.
Okay. Also, in terms of the public interest in consolidation, I'll just say I can see the consolidation of like Pinto and Highland Estates, but what's your what's your reason for believing that consolidation of Green Ridge and Province's totally distinct areas is reasonable?
They're all under the same ownership, so it would recognize that. They're all receiving the same essential level of service, and all of these are very, very small systems. Even the combined total customer base of the four systems, or I know there's some subsystems in there as well, but the combined customer base is just over 3,300 customers, which is still a very small customer base. And so there's benefits to all of those customers of having the ability to spread capital costs in particular.
Okay.
If there's
And did you look at in terms of public interest in the differential incomes in the different communities? And if so, why not? I'm assuming you didn't, but.
No, not that specifically, but I would just note that, as I understand it, the communities with the lower incomes are receiving the smaller both dollar value and percentage increase in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. That's shocking. Who were you not picking up, sir? Okay. Do we need to reboot or? Okay. All right. I mean, I think we're just about done. But Mr. Bugelman, do you have any other questions?
I don't have any questions. I have an answer to your question, Your Honor, about the last rate case.
Okay. Mr. Court Reporter, can we you just want to? I don't have any more questions for the witness. Do you think can we just slug on, or you want to go ahead and restart?
And I think your system is not the reporter.
Oh, no, I would agree with that 100%. I have no idea what the issue is, but I'm sure it's on our side.
But, so yeah, the audio isn't coming out good.
Okay, all right. So why don't you go ahead and reboot, and we'll stand by. Or what do I?
You would have to reboot.
Oh, I have
It's
to
not my
reboot.
reporter.
Okay.
It's your system.
Okay, so you want me to? It's the YouTube probably. I mean, that's the only thing I would reset.
Okay, or you may have to call tech support to see why your system isn't working now.
All right, are you getting the recording?
No.
No.